You are now tuned into episode 34 of the HipPodHedz podcast, where me and Novek discuss our favorite hip hop moments. I am Know Sage, and follow us on all the socials. Check us out, rate, review, share, all that good stuff. We got a special guest on this episode, friend of our former previous guest, Paradox Frequency Manipulator, Iowa Rockwell, MC Crave, Dave Urso. Welcome to the show, sir.
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Yeah,
Hello,
man.
Dave. Welcome.
We've been
Thank you.
I've been collaborating with you. I've been crossing paths with you. It just seems like all roads lead to you, man. So it's like, and I know you're a husband, father, and genre bending musician for life. Lover of all good music. Like what current bands are you on? Because I know you're a one-man band of many bands.
Yeah, so I'm in two bands technically right now.
Right.
One is a band by the name of Honest Enemy, and that came about with recently in the last year and a half with guys I grew up with. We had been talked about doing that for a long time, doing something. We finally got it together. We've been recording, just made a little video, which I'm gonna start passing out, and try to get it done before Halloween. Had a little spooky aesthetic to it, had my son in it, Damien, my older son. That was cool. And then the other band I'm in is Kingery, and Kingery is a band that I don't know, I'm probably the third or fourth drummer in this band over time, but the brothers, Gene and Ed Jenke, they put this band together a long time ago with John Cush, the singer. And then Gene and I had met through years. He's a bass player, and we were working on some other music together, kind of a funk project called Cosmic Sugar. And that kind of is still not dead out there. We want to put it together at some point again. And but then they kind of recruited me to do what they were doing in the past. They wanted to bring it back to life, and I heard what they were doing. I liked it. It was challenging at times, a little progressive, so I said, yeah, let's do it. I jump in, and everyone's busy. Everyone's, we're all busy dads doing our thing locally still.
Yes, sir.
So we got to work efficiently and try to get stuff in where we could fit stuff in, and it's probably the story for a lot of us at this point,
But I love it though, because you've always been a utility man. Like even before being a dad, you were always just putting in that work, just playing your role and just making it work moments,
Yeah, that's kind of how we met, back in the day, and with the 3rd Eyelanders crew, and all that great stuff that was happening then. I was always a fan of hip hop, and really a fan of mixing it up the best I can, and when I got the call from Joel and Maxime,
yes, sir.
Max, the one and only,
who goes by Video Dave nowadays.
They broke the mold when they make that kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And they broke it and made sure they swept it up and put away. There's no one in the world like that dude. But and I love him to this day. Love him to this day. So, but he called me up. We were all in the neighborhood over there, off of Damien and stuff, and we had become friends. And he knew I played. He's like, come and do this. Like, all right. When's what do we got going? When's the first show? Tuesday. It was like this was like no, Thursday. This was on a Tuesday. I'm like, oh, all right, let's do it. So that's how that came together very quickly. So and those were great times.
I appreciate you waxing poetic on the nostalgia, because we also had NorfStar on our podcast. We're gonna have Video Dave at some point. And when I was mentioning all roads lead to you, we already had Spiz on our show as well. I was actually chopping it up with Pablo last week. He's going to be on our podcast pretty soon too. And he's been cooking it up with a lot of, hybrid things just like you do as well.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, man, like real talk, when you were talking about those days in Wicker Park, Bucktown, like Sub T, like
Mhm.
I I was just a hip hop kid. I was just a hip hop kid with a tape deck at the crib. Like I wasn't really a musician by any stretch of the imagination. But when I performed with you, with the collective, like that was my first experience of like instrument live hip hop. You know what I mean? Like in its truest form. And it's just like it was just an honor and a blessing, man, just to always like, be in your space whenever we cross paths.
Yeah, you know what was fun about that stuff too is that there was like a freedom with it as well, you know. So like every show had was different. I remember my first few shows with that, I had a different bass player every time. Most of it was unrehearsed, you know. So and now we're going back a little ways, you know, in time. So I remember those first couple shows having my disc man next to me, and I would duck down behind the kit and listen to just the beginning of the song that was programmed initially,
Mhm.
just so I can get those first licks to lead the song in right, and then it would just go off on its own free aspect kind of thing. And but what was holding it together was the lyrics, the MCs, and the rhythm of that. You know what I mean? So
Yes,
I
sir.
got to play off of the rhythm of you guys, you know, and it was like that back and forth. So that was the one thing where, as in a lot of stuff, I'm always relying on my bass player. I was very reliant on you guys with that stuff to kind of keep me in place and keep everyone true, you know, if that makes sense.
Oh,
That's
that
pretty
does,
awesome.
man.
So you're basically playing it by ear. You're hearing it and then basically just playing it.
Yeah, it was kind of a bounce back and forth kind of thing, all in real time, you know,
Wow.
real time, same time, you know. So it would morph into whatever at times. But again, we'd have the stability of the MCs, which we had a lot of. You know, we were like Wu-Tang kind of in a
Yeah,
way.
man.
There was like a lot of dudes on stage. You know?
Yeah, there was like a horn section. I also wanted to mention like Surfboard C, aka Cornell. He's gonna be on our show at some point, as well as Dave, aka Video Dave. We're gonna have him too. But yeah,
Yeah.
like all the MCs, like with their own personalities, doing their Midwest version of the posse '90s hip hop scene, as it were. It was dope, man. I mean, like honestly, like I am never really versed in jazz, but I always love the romantic notion of like hip hop being jazz, and just being able to create like music just like live and just right out the cuff, and just kind of freestyling it, as it were.
100%. You know, that's important to me, like as a musician, is having that ability to kind of step in and out a little bit, genre, like I was saying, genre bending a little bit. You know, some of the best stuff I've done over time has been with guys who like all different styles of music, you know, where we could flip it from rock to reggae, and and the same thing, and then twist it back around, and throw this or throw that in it. That that's a lot of fun. It keeps things interesting. If you're a person on the listening side of that in the crowd, at least from my perspective, that keeps me interested, because it's not vanilla at that point, you know. So, and I think that applies with all kinds of music if you wanted to, might start off with rock, but you could veer off this way. It might start off with hip hop, but you could veer off this way. But it's always going to come back to point A, So, and that's a good thing to do, I think, from a listening perspective, and a someone who I'm not a young man anymore, but I still think I have ADD for on some level when it comes to music, for sure. You know what I mean? It's like I can't just do the same shit all the time, or else I'm gonna get bored. So that's a good way to look at it.
I mean, you think about it, like that's the way music is. Like, like some of your influences, like, I know I know you're influenced by Run DMC, Eric B, and I noticed that reference Rage Against the Machine. I started thinking about the Evil Empire. That was probably like the first album I heard from Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
And it's got so many hip hop elements on the Evil Empire. You listen to it. I mean, it's got the great album work, the cover. That image on the cover is pretty nice. Every drum on that Evil Empire album is phenomenal, pretty much.
Right.
I guess your take on things when you got into Rage a bit. What were your influences? What made you fall in love with Rage Against the Machine?
Well, I mean that's simple. You got the Public Enemy going on in the background there. I love Public Enemy in the '80s, man. I loved it. Again, I'm not a spring chicken. I got my. I don't know if I should even say this, but I'm approaching my 52nd birthday in this upcoming February, 24, which is crazy. So I was lucky to have grown up in times where I get the 70s, 60s, 70s influence into the 80s with new wave, and then boom, Public Enemy came out. And what I loved about Public Enemy is that they were pissed off. You know what I mean? It was like, so it still they had a message. The music was great. And it still had that, it might've been hip hop, but it still had that punk rock aesthetic to it because they were aggravated and they had shit to say. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when you're a teenage kid, that's appealing, it just is, you hear that. And then you get, the bass line from Follow the Leader from Eric B and Rakim, you know what I mean? And mm-hmm. how do you say no to that? Like you hear that shit. And it's funny, I sent you that message yesterday, and wouldn't you know, because I listened to Rock the Bells on Sirius XM, and sure enough, that came on last night. I'm like, oh, that's got to be a sign or something. And
yes, sir, took you back.
I had my 8-year-old in the car that I picked up from his piano lesson, and he's like, Daddy, I like this song. I'm like, I know. It's just, you just feel it. How could you say no to that bass line? And that articulated lyric, you know what I mean? And that's what I loved about back then, is that I understood what they were saying, and it was articulated, and it just, struck a chord, so you lead, but at the same time, I would be a teenager in my bedroom listening to that, but I'd also be flipping over to Led Zeppelin when I was done with that, you know what I mean? And Iron Maiden, English metal at the time, and whatever else I was listening to at the time. So I'm listening to this on one extreme and listening to that on another stream, and then boom, all of a sudden you hit the 90s, and a Rage Against the Machine comes into play, and it's like everything that I was loving kind of was served on one dish, and I was like, holy shit. I'm like, they're aggravated. It's hip hop. It's metal. You know what I mean? It's like, it's everything you would want. And it was done well. You know what I mean? It wasn't like some cheesy, just, thrown together stuff. It was done well. And there was a message in there as well. Some of the messages as you get older, might get lost over with, but the delivery certainly does not, I'll still hear some of that music as many times as I've heard it. When I'm driving, all of a sudden I see my speed limit going up a little. I mean, you know what I mean? The speedometer is going up a little bit because I'm still getting pumped up when I'm listening to that shit, so, but same way, with a Public Enemy, and I hear Don't Believe the Hype. I'm bumping that shit when I'm dropping my kids off at school or whatever. It doesn't matter, and so yeah, and there was the 90s were a very interesting time for that, because that merger of sounds was happening. Hip hop was very influential into rock in the 90s, very influential. Even if it wasn't a guy who was necessarily rapping over it, you were still hearing hip hop minded grooves.
Yes.
With some of the stuff, some samples dropped in, some things like that with bands, even like Korn, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. They had a hip hop underbelly as well, even though it wasn't necessarily hip hop, you know what I mean? So, and for the kids that grew up with that stuff, you got it, you understood it, you just went with it because you felt it, you know what I mean? So, and then it moved on to some stuff that might be perceived as a little on the cheesier side with the Limp Bizkits and all that stuff of the world, but some of that was good too, some of that was good too. I saw those fools at Woodstock, dude. I was there at Woodstock when dude was on the board, I was about 20 feet away from them. I've never been in a crowd like that since. It was crazy, you know. So whatever they were doing something right, you know. So yeah, so it was,
I
you
love
know,
that.
yeah, you know, the question of how you get to that point, it's just loving good stuff, you know, loving good, tasteful stuff from different genres, and kind of putting it in one bowl, if you will.
I love how you said it was all served on one dope platter when Rage came out. So that was a nice walkthrough. I actually wanted to go back to you talking about the ADD aspect, right? Because when we had Spiz and he was talking about his drumming and like how he would just get into his whole like drum and bass type vibes. Like I feel like I don't know, there's probably a lot of stuff that's stirring in your mind as far as like escapism, as far as releasing, like you just mentioned messages. And then just like the whole thing, like I love that you pointed out, like you don't necessarily need to hear rapping to know that it's hip hop. It's definitely a vibe. It all comes back to the drums or even other things probably in music for that matter.
Right. True. I mean, the rhythm, you know, you got that rhythm, you're holding it down a little bit more. It's less of the spastic changes and things like that. It's more consistent. And, you know, sometimes that's hard from a drumming perspective because you would think it's easier, but sometimes just staying in that pocket, you want to jump out, you know? So those guys who do that, like a guy like Brad Wilk from Rage, but you know, then it progresses into a hip hop band like the Roots. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, sir.
dude, the first time I heard the Roots and realized that they were a live band, you know, I was like, dude, I love this shit. You know, love it. And I saw them in the late '90s as well. And Questlove was probably an influence on me when I was with 3rd Eyelanders, in that I kind of just stripped away my drum kit and was just playing on a kick, snare, hi-hat, just a real simple kit just to keep us together. I didn't need to be really going all over the place. I just wanted to keep us as a tight unit, as tight as we could be for having something different every time, right? You know, you know, for those who were part of that, understand exactly what I'm talking about with that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that rhythm, you know, that hip hop mindset of kind of boom, you know, let's keep it here and let's bring it and make it pop out when it needs to pop out, you know. And it happens more around the lyrics than it does in the delivery of the lyrics and the rhythmic of what you guys do. And that's another reason why I like the hip hop stuff, because there's percussion in the delivery.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like a conga
Yes.
player at times. You know what I mean? It's like you're not playing necessarily on the beat, you're playing off the beat. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, you get the right MCs and they're doing that, and that's keeping everything in a nice flow. And, you know, maybe a little friction here and there. You know what I mean? That's good.
Right.
It's happening rhythmically through the delivery of those lyrics, you know. So that's another attraction with that. And that's, again, things you could be found in music related to that, like we were talking about.
I just love that you were just also like culturing your kiddos there, because I do the same thing. It's kind of like, hey, you need to pay attention to this, and every now and then it catches their ears. So I know that your kids are into music. You sent me some videos. Your oldest on the keys, he was really nice on it.
Yeah.
So that's nice though. I like that you keep like underlining the message, because I think, I mean, I don't want to say that the message is lost, but you know, like for music nowadays, sometimes it feels like it's very much secondary, which is fine, right? I mean, music can be just a vibe and an emotion too, but you know, there's a definite prominent lane in the message.
But this generation of kids, the 11 and below or 12 and up, their musicality is so unique right now. Like, you know, my kid does piano, and it's amazing when you're in a room with a kid playing the piano, and you got a drummer in the room, and then you got somebody playing bass in the room. And this is what you're seeing now. They're teaching them music. They're teaching music like it's a band right now. You know, like it used to be separate piano lessons by themselves. No, it's the whole entire band in one room
Sure.
We do Old Town School of Music, and so
Okay.
basically you go in there and it's like everybody is like, man, they're all playing different instruments. It's nuts to see how much talent. You even got MCs walking around the building now, like
Yeah.
kids that are poets. I'm like, that's the MC over there. So if you put it together, you think about the Third Islanders and everything like that. People are already doing that now
Yeah.
at like 12-year-olds. And they're gonna be much further advanced than we were musically and everything, or how we listen to music and play music and everything.
Oh yeah, I agree. Not to mention like the YouTube aspect of all that. Like
Mm-hmm.
what you're able to see on YouTube and get a lesson now for free and all this other stuff. Like we didn't have that. I didn't have that. It's like, you need to either put the time in or spend time in a room with somebody teaching you or whatever it was. And now these kids, just like with sports, I relate music and being in a band to being on a team, a lot. Because it's so similar in so many ways. And these, you look at these athletes and the things that they're doing now that some of the guys in the past weren't doing. They're like their bodies they look like they're chiseled. You know what I mean? They're doing these crazy things that they could do that with music as well, because it's all out there to find. So, it's for my son in general, he's 8 years old. My older son, he plays piano. He's been taking piano lessons, but he also plays drums, and he has my ear, but now he's going to have musical training that I didn't have. So it's going to be silly if he stays with it. You know what I mean? He's going to be that good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we want for our kids. Right. I mean, but it does blow your mind when you're seeing some of them do what I was hoping to do at 18. He's doing at 8, like, so.
Yeah. So say a word about that, because like Dave from Spiz, from Spism, like he sort of mentioned that he kind of came up on classical music training, but then he kind of somehow stepped into drumming. I don't know if it was like an escape element for him, or just, it was just a different cavern of his brain he wanted to like explore. Like, are you more or less saying like, since you weren't trained, you sort of like fell into music in a different way?
I started late playing music. I always wanted to play music. And then there was like a specific moment, epiphany, if you want to call it, that I was just standing there at a concert and I was like, holy shit, that's it. Now I got to play.
Nice.
I got to make music. You know what I mean? And
I love that.
Yeah. I saw that concert was in 1991, and it was
way back.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
All right. Man, they still kicking around, man.
Dude, they're not only still kicking it, their last 2 albums are super dope, super dope. And you want to talk about a guy that spits out a lot of lyrics. I mean, I'd love to have a lyric count on everything that guy has put out through the years, because he says a lot. He says a lot within a 3 to 4 minute song. And that's a lot of memory. That's a whole nother aspect of, singing and playing and all that other shit. But,
yes,
but back to that particular moment, I remember seeing that show. It was, some of the biggest bands that would be were Pearl Jam and Smashing Pumpkins and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it blew my mind. It just blew my mind. I was like, remember the Memorex commercials when the dude's sitting in a chair and shit and he was getting the wind blowing at him? I mean, that's how I felt. I felt like I was the only person in the Aragon when that was going on. I was like, holy shit, dude, that just blew my mind. You know what I mean? And, made some calls. My uncle was a sax player. I'm like, Uncle Rudy, if anyone's selling a drum set, I got it. I want it.
Oh,
literally calls me up a week later and says, my buddy's getting divorced. He's got a PA and a drum set. Do you want it? I said, I want it.
Hey.
And that's where it all started. You know what I mean? So
wow.
Yeah. And so my training, that was a long answer to all that. My training was really playing with guys that were better than me always, and making them force me to keep up with them. You know what I mean? Sure. That was how I played, and I got to where I'm at these days. Now that I don't recommend for a lot of people. I think sometimes it's better to be isolated and work on your instrument, but I just wanted to make music. I just wanted to make music. You know what I mean? I wanted to create. So sometimes looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have probably spent a little more alone time working on, paradiddles and shit like that, right, left, but I was more like, what are you doing? Let's meet. What time? I don't know. I'm not free till 1 this morning. All right, let's meet at the studio. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, and just work and just hammer shit out. And, again, they're kind of making you better at what you do. And as a drummer, I needed good bass players around. That was always important. I always had a good bass player around, and that made me, stay true to my playing, and not, staying within the wheelhouse of things, if you will, and
Yeah.
And then occasionally, again, like we talked about earlier, stepping out a little bit here and there, where when duty calls, but
Yeah, man. I mean, you as long as I've known you, you've always seemed like a jack of all trades type dude. But I love that story you told because it's sort of like the sports connection too, right? Like for me, I really didn't have any like formalized sports training other than going to open gyms with my dad for basketball, right? And then it's like,
right.
Hey, I know I want to play. I know they got game. I need to put myself in a space where there's better competition than me, so I can level up basically.
Right. Exactly. There's a lot, man. When you get to playing with dudes, I don't care if you're playing basketball or football. Remember that turkey bowl we did back in the day?
Hey man, yo,
That turkey bowl.
I'm
You know what I mean?
another one next week to torture my body, but that's another story.
Yeah, that was a good game, dude. That was a really good game. It was fun. But
live to tell the tale.
Yeah. It was probably one of my last ones, to be honest.
Hey. No collarbone broken, baby.
Oh, dude, I'd love to. But
we got you.
Just kind of knowing where your guy's going to be, right? Like you could, like if you're playing defense, right, and watching the game last night against the Bucks and the Bulls, right? If you're going to veer off in that zone and you're going to move over to this side, you got to make sure that your guy's going to cover your ass on this side. You know what I mean? So, there's that. Same with football, timing patterns, right? You're throwing the ball, you got to make sure your guy's going to be there. So, some of that happens on the, when the dude's scrambling and getting there, you kind of still know where he's going to go. You know what I mean? And that's the jam and that's the freeness aspect of it. If you're playing music, or if it's staying within those lines, and we rehearsed it this way and that's how we decided we're going to do it, then that's how we're going to do it. You know what I mean? So, there's a lot of parallels with sports and music and life in general, to be honest with you, because it's all, in my opinion, it's all about keeping a rhythm and timing and rhythm, in your career, in your love life, and whatever, so.
And like I'm sort of going down this rabbit hole because you just made me think about sports and music and hip hop and rap. And I not long ago finished the Hulu Lakers series, that legacy series where it starts like from the Magic days and it goes all the way to the LeBron days, right? But there's one of the episodes in the mini docuseries or whatever it is where they sort of like were pinpointing like basketball had more class, like you were talking about, like you be here, you be there, camaraderie. But then, when the LA riots hit, then it was like more angst. And they were talking about the Van Exel days, and the respect days. So I was sort of like, I feel like hip hop is like an amalgam of that. It's sort of like the proxy of, everyone's doing their musical shit, but also there's the time to beat your chest and, like just like dunk on somebody.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, again, the parallels are there with all of it, right? NBA and everything else. And, those are, you're crossing over with some stuff too, with all that too. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's that hip hop ends up being the soundtrack for so much of that. And, 100%. Like, you got to catch a rhythm and timing, sometimes not about even what, who, sometimes it's just about the timing of when you decided to do it. You know what I mean? Like
right.
you jump in on something too soon, you fuck the song up. You know what I mean? It's like, and or too late for that matter. You missed the parade. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's so many parallels with all of it. Yeah, I mean, not to go too far on that, right? And there's a lot of interesting characters in sports as well as there are musicians, man. So that's for sure.
Nah, it's like if you missed the wave pretty much at that point, you come in too early. It's almost like when you watch little girls jump rope. If they jump too soon, then they mess up the whole process. Then they got to start turning the rope again at the same time. But you read about the parallels of sports. Is like you can tell during every time period who the artist was, what the influence was. Like the Lakers series you mentioned, it was a lot of, it kind of was a little bit of coming off that Led Zeppelin high, toward when Magic got to LA. He was still moving like a rock star, like
Right.
you said Led Zeppelin. I had that flashback. I'm thinking like, man, I was a baby around that time period, but at the same time, I remember that music. I remember like watching those videos with the blimp with the Hindenburg blimp crashing. That's what I
Yeah.
think about when I think about Led Zeppelin. I think about them crashing culture at that point. That blimp hitting was like symbolic. It was like they changed music. Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant, them, they changed music at that point in time.
100%. 100%. Still it'll always be fresh to my ears, and making sure that my kids carry that love on and with stuff like that. I mean, they've been a highly sampled band over time as well. You've heard them a lot of different stuff in hip hop. I know the Beastie Boys used to sample the shit out of them
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. And because they had, it was cool. And that, there again, they were some of that rock rap stuff, just kind of taking us back to what we were talking about earlier. Some of that was going on, Run DMC was doing that already. King of Rock, back in the day. And then you had the Beastie Boys messing with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the best shows I ever saw in my life ever, and I've seen a lot, was the Beastie Boys with Tribe Called Quest. And
Wow.
dude, it was in the round. It was when Rosemont Horizon was still, Rosemont Horizon. And Tribe did their thing, and the B-Boys came on and just smashed everything. It was great because that was a band that was genre bending if there ever was one, because they were punk rock guys initially that moved into hip hop. They were doing funk. So they would give you everything at one of their shows. And I'm like, damn, my dude, I would love to be part of that. You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to jump off the drums and jump on the congas, you know what I mean? And like leave that and like have someone else come in and do that. You know what I mean? Like just move around. It just made me think of that, veering off again a little bit, but there was all happening. That melding of things was kind of all happening in that time, so sorry, I got off script there.
This is good stuff, man. You write about how everything changed at that point. Like, I think first time my kid heard Corn and Ice Cube, that she heard "Fuck Dying," and I didn't want her to hear it, and she was just like, "But Daddy, the song is so nice," because all you hear is Corn in the background. Ice Cube's rapping on top of it,
Yeah,
but Corn is killing it the whole entire time. I mean, I would say hip hop and band and everything like that, and you talk about the Roots. It's like the Roots do a good job of it, but when you go true rock, or you do like you look at the Eagles and stuff like what the Eagles did. The Eagles album pretty much is sampled. They sampled the hell out the Eagles and everything.
yeah, they did. You're right.
Yeah, and the Eagles to me, man, like I bought some of their. Vinyl has really reconnected me with rock and hip hop and everything else lately, because the vinyl era basically brings you back into music at its purest form at this point in time.
Right. Yeah, I started kind of re-upping my vinyl collection. I need to get a new turntable, but I see something that I like. I see something I like, and I'm like, oh, I got to grab it. Even if I'm not listening to it, I got to have it. And
yes, sir.
It reminds me of being a kid and being fascinated with those album covers. Anyways,
another way to pay it forward to this current this current generation. I apologize. I do got to peel off in a sec. I will let Novak close this out in a moment. But Urso, you're making me thinking about like the drummer aesthetic, because like I would have just thought it was just like go wild out, just a balls to the wall, like just keep jamming. But like you said a couple times, like sometimes you have to know when to stay in the pocket or when to like step back. So like there's this like dope quote I love from Dilated Peoples, like the best MC on that crew is Evidence, right? He has this really like recognizable voice. And I always grapple with this line out of some of his lyrics. Like the line basically says, my motto, I didn't write, but this I quote, it ain't where you put your words, it's where you don't. Right. And it's kind of like I sometimes like think about that from time to time. It's like sometimes there's music bits where it's like sometimes you just have to stop, sometimes you have to let it breathe, and sometimes you have to know like when to pause. So like it's just sort of like it's sort of at odds in my mind. It's like how can a blank space be so important to music when there's no music happening, you know?
Space, dude, you know, space is important. It's real important in music. Some of the best drummers and musicians out there know that. They know that's why they're the best. You know, it's like you can't always be pushing, you know, sometimes you gotta hang back a little bit and throw that stop in there, because that stop makes everyone, it does this. It's like, oh, what's that? Now you pick back, you know what I mean? It's like it's that little friction that I often like to have in my music. You know, you could be flowing, then boom, stop out of, you know, even if it's 2 seconds or breath, you just take a and you kick it back in, right? It gives it that little friction that to me keeps things interesting, because otherwise it's this, you know what I mean? It's just straight, it's a straight line, and straight lines are boring, you know what I mean? So even if it's simple, sometimes just that little breath in there has to happen. So
Understood.
I agree. That's a great line. I love that line. I got to remember that. Now I want to listen to it, to be honest with you. I haven't listened to that band in a long time anyways.
Nah, it's you know, you think about it. I mean, that silence sometimes is like golden. Sometimes, you know, especially when everybody starts moving. Like, you know, Black Eyed Peas do it a lot, where they start, you know, they're working real hard, then they just pause, and the whole crowd just stops, and you hear that dead silence in there, and they bring it back, and it comes back harder than before they paused it.
100%, 100%. But it jerked your blood a little bit. You know what I mean? Just by doing that. And so it grabs the people. I remember seeing the Roots back in the day. It was at the Tibetan Freedom concert. I don't know if you remember those.
I
That
remember
was
those.
yeah, it was the Beastie Boys thing. They were putting on these shows, and it was in a couple of different cities. The first one I saw was in San Francisco. This one happened to be at Alpine Valley, but the Roots came out, um, and they were stopping, literally stopping, like freezing, all of them. And it wasn't just for a breath. They would stop and they would freeze. And there was, I don't know, some signal that was going on in between them all. Someone did a sound or something that you couldn't hear, but they all kicked back in. Perfect. And it just got the crowd. Everyone was just like, waiting for when they were going to come back in. And they were doing it like different times every time. It was so dope, you know, and I love it, you know, because it's just changing things up and it's keeping it interesting, is what it's doing. It's fun to watch too, right? You know.
I agree. I mean, Questlove, and then you think about, then you got Black Thought in that group. I mean, they, you know, the Roots. I mean, they've had different members of the Roots over time, but I would say every version of that band has been dope or different in some way. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you think about Philadelphia basically was a different sound versus what they're doing today. Like I was just listening to one of their most recent albums, how I got over, and that situation. I mean, they're evolving, which is really nice. You know, with a band.
Right, right.
Evolution of the Roots is incredible. Their sound has gotten they can play any cover at this point right now. It was
Oh yeah.
strictly hip hop, but now it's evolved to it's bigger than hip hop at this point. They're everybody's band, which is incredible. To see
No,
how they're
they're a well-rounded band. I remember seeing them. Well, I've seen them a lot of times over the years, and they will put, you know, they were doing rock covers, and they were, you know, their guitar player, what's his name, Douglas, I believe.
hmm
That dude smokes. I mean, that dude could play anything. You know what I mean? So you put him in, you can put him in the middle of a metal band, and the guy will figure it out. You know, and so they were. I remember seeing them. They were covering Guns N' Roses. They were like, but they were like taking snippets of it and throwing it into different. You know what I mean? Like doing a
hmm
medley almost, if you will. That takes talent to do that. You know, that's a lot of talent. So yeah, again, you know, the kind of the mix up idea of things. You know, the currently the bands that I'm in are definitely the rock bands. But It's kind of one of those sins. Remember The Godfather 3? When El Pacino was like trying to go legit, and he's like, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Pull me back
you
in.
know, you know what I mean? It's like one of those situations. I'm known in my little circles, and I get calls, and it's all, as long as it's done tasteful, it's cool. But I love funk, I love horn sections, and I'd love to do something again with Mr. Albo over there, and crew. I'd love to do some kind of reunion show with those guys at some point, just to keep it interesting.
I mean, like with Honest Enemy. Now, the songs I've listened to so far is that Redemption track is nice. I've heard Breathe, I heard Redemption, and just listening, listening to like what stands out in those tracks. Man, the soul in those tracks is incredible. It makes the MC want to get on Redemption. And see, like, basically, what else can we do? What else can we do with this sound right now? That's the way I listen to music, and I'm like, okay, who can I imagine on top of this, on top of you guys playing like this? I mean, because the energy is frenetic almost, basically.
Yep. We're definitely going for a specific, not an overproduced sound. We kind of wanted that rawness to it, and for nostalgic reasons, you know what I mean? You hear a lot of good stuff, and you could tell underneath it all there's some good players in there. But I think like there's a trend in rock and heavy music right now that is really overproduced. It's really overproduced. They're using too many plugins and shit. Let's get the real sound of the snare in that room. You know what I'm saying? And let's get the right room, the right filling, and use the acoustics that are happening to our favor instead of immediately flipping away and plugging in on something else. So I'm glad you guys like it. Redemption is definitely a song that you could probably throw some smooth, like a rap over if you wanted to. Maybe not so much the Breathe song, but it all could be done. It depends on which way you're looking at it, from what angle. It can all be done. Look at body. Are you familiar with Body Count? And
I am. So Ice-T's band.
Yeah,
Body Count. Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Dude, Ice-T's still doing it, dude. I mean, he's still out there doing it. Saw him last summer. Love him. There's actually one of my sons. He was 2 years old. He was on my shoulders watching Body Count at a festival. And remember seeing him do his regular rap show at the Metro, and then coming out with Body Count in the early 90s. And that was like, because I loved Ice-T coming out of the 80s. I didn't mention him earlier, just thought about it, as we're talking, but he's not necessarily a singer. So he's kind of doing a version of rap / singing over metal, and it's still packing houses. To be done.
I mean, it's rap singing, but he's a strong lyricist. So, like, the thing with Ice-T was he always had a good delivery. His setup and delivery is impeccable. Even like when he's just doing purely hip hop beats, he took that to Body Count. Cause I remember Body Count. I mean, I remember that first album, Cop Killing, everything on there. That was a brilliant album. The problem was people focused on that one track, didn't hear the rest of the album. And right. When I bought that originally on cassette tape, I bought it because I want to hear Cop Killer. And then I heard the other songs on there, and I was like, man, these dudes really can play. So I mean, Body Count, yeah, they're phenomenal. They're up there. I mean, I think that they're mainstream, but they should be more mainstream. If you think about it, they should be more out there in that situation. But Ice-T, he's still holding it down. He's still doing shows. People know what Body Count is. They got a nice discography out there. You go listen to them. They got a lot of music that nobody knew they did. That's the crazy thing.
Exactly. There's like I think there's kind of a blessing with some of those bands when you don't get overly big, because they could still come through cities and play the Metros, the Aragons of the world, the Ribs of the world, and pack the shit out of them, versus that bag who rises too quick. And they were in stadiums now, and now they're playing at, summer fest, summer barbecue fest somewhere out in Naperville or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, they're craving that, stadium still. We're versus guys that are kind of keeping it on a nice level rise, if you will, more strategic rise. So, and I'd say they'd fall in there with that.
Well, think about Real Hot Chili Peppers. They rose real quick, they fell, and then they came back middle. So and then they're rising again. Anthony Kiedis has always been awesome. You think about how he controls the crowd. I mean, the first time I listened to Californication, I was sitting there like, what is this? MTV, during that time period, hip hop, certain mythologies went off with Baby Got Back, and that's you see Anthony Kiedis, you see his mouth, that one video he's basically he's rapping.
He's basically rapping, yeah.
He's basically rapping. You see Anthony Kiedis' mouth, and you see the tooth. It's him. That's Anthony Kiedis right there. I mean, what they were doing in those videos, giving away and everything like that, they were killing. They killed most of the '90s, and people, don't always give them their flowers. They're like Flea was in that group. Flea has always been on a different level in that situation. So, Red Hot Chili Peppers is probably one of my earliest exposure to that style of it's like hip hop meets rock. It meets everything else, and I got to thank MTV for putting them on at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Still one of my Sirius XM now. Like, it's really hard for me to listen to a regular radio station now.
Mm-hmm.
With the commercials and all that stuff. And Sirius XM happens to have a Red Hot Chili Pepper station right now, and it's great. Kind of reacquainted me with some old stuff, and got my kids loving it now and everything else because it's one of the go-tos in the car. But there's a song called Poster Child that just came out. And dude, that dude spits a lot of lyrics out in that song. Check out that song if you haven't heard it. It's one of their out of a recent album that they put out in the last couple of years. I think you'll like it. Sounds like you got a good wide range of taste, which is great. It makes for good conversation too, when you can come from different angles.
I've been listening to everything lately. I mean, I got back into Beach Boys recently, Pet Shops, Pet Sounds, basically. I've been listening to that. That basically, you can hear what the Beatles are trying to do. It's funny because the Beach Boys and the Beatles, you look at that parallel, and you look at how they played instruments in that situation. The Beach Boys were ahead of their time.
Sure.
That sounds phenomenal. You go listen to Abbey Lane and everything like that, and you listen to it and you go, okay, so the way I look at music is that, a lot of it, it's me listening to the Beach Boys, is listening to you listen to like different artists during that time period. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, even Jimmy Buffett at one point in time was getting played in the car when I was going to school. So like every artist was fair game in my house, even around my mentors and stuff like that growing up. Everybody listened to everything. So like it wasn't just hip hop. I love hip hop, but I find elements where like a Kanye or somebody samples somebody, and you go, I know where that came from. Like Daft Punk. Think about Daft Punk. I mean, most of these hip hop artists today don't understand Daft Punk, but they're sampling Daft Punk, which is the hilarious thing about it. That basically, that's music. Even when I was a kid, that people thought was weird and strange, but now it's the future. You think like, I think some artists evolved so far up that we gotta catch up with them just to understand what the hell they were trying to do. That's how I look at a lot of these bands. They're more relevant, like Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff like that, or even Fleetwood Mac. They're more relevant today than they were during their time period.
Right, and it was done how many years ago, right? And that's the beauty of it all, where it becomes timeless, and there's been so much of that. And again, because I'm like my age and my love and of music in general, like I feel blessed to have kind of rode through a few different decades, where here I am, born in the early 70s, but the people around me are listening to this. My mother loved R&B. My aunt and uncles love rock and roll. You know what I mean? So it's like you kind of start to get a little bit of all that, and then you move into your own likings, and then you start to realize that there's a little bit of all that and all this, So it's yeah, and then you move into some of the early hip hop stuff, which we talked about. Like it'll always be important to me, like the Public Enemies and Eric B's and stuff like that. That shit is always going to be great to me.
Oh,
You know,
always.
it might sound dusty to some kid right now who's listening to, you know, to wherever he's listening to. I don't even know. You know, I feel like that old dude that sometimes I don't know what's up. You know, or I'm like, oh, my time was better. You know what I mean? That guy. But they might hear it and be like, oh, this is so plain and there's not a lot going on in it. I'm like, that's the beauty of it, you know? Like, it was down to the basics, and they were making it happen, and it was new. It was new, and it was breath of fresh air at the time.
Well, think of it this way. I mean, when you made music back then, it went on for like 10 minutes almost. You know,
Right.
you think about, Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. Now, first time I heard that album, I was in high school. I'm like in the 90s. I'm like in the mid 90s to end 90s in high school, and I heard Dark Side of the Moon. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm just like, why does this make sense? It's kind of interesting. So I got older and listened to it again in college and listened to it again, as a 40-year-old man. And I'm like, wow, Pink Floyd was on a different level. They're English, but at the same time, it was so American in concept, if you think about it. It's crazy. Like, that song Us and Them. That song is ridiculous. You listen to the arrangement, the chords and everything on it. And I think that's the way hip hop is going to be viewed over time. Like, you think about Run DMC, you think about even Christmas in the Hollies and stuff like that. It's got a rock bass on it. And people go like,
Still one of my favorite Christmas songs, by the way, to this
everybody.
day. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that song's phenomenal, man. You think about that. You think about even their later work, like Down with the King and everything like that. You got the rock in the background. You got the church effects. You got the lightning. Basically it's a rock concert with Ron and everybody rapping on top of it. That's what it is, and that's what made DMC so popular. And then you mentioned Eric B. Follow Leader. You think about Rakim. Eric B for president and everything like that. I mean, that stuff heavy rock, and that's why they got on MTV. To be honest with you, because MTV was kind of blurring the lines a little bit, but we didn't catch it. Look at Funky Cold Medina, Tone Loc.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the biggest records out there, and it's a lot of
Medina. That was they sampled Van Halen on that one.
Stuff the hell out of Van Halen. I mean, and you have like an older person at that point in time, somebody we thought was old come up to you, that's Van Halen. And so you're like, no, that's Tone Loc. I'm like, no, that's Van Halen. So we're just, history just repeating itself right now. We're going through the same cycle that we went through when we were kids, and some adult came up and said, who the original artist was on that song. But yeah, it is nice to see it evolve like this. I mean, I think that you need good music in order to have today's music, because I think there's creativity today, but it's more creativity with that, you said it best. Let's put that machine there instead of the instrument. But when you hear that instrument playing, that's like I started buying a lot of live albums. Like I bought all the Roots albums live. I picked up a Kanye album. It's like late orchestration. So it's the whole entire late registration album done with a band.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah. Remember back in the day when LL Cool J busted out with a band, and they did Mama Said Knock You Out, and he had a band. Dudes, I just remember dudes in the back with their long hair doing what they're doing, shirts off, whatever, and LL Cool J was up in front of it all. And that was he flipped the script on that, because obviously it wasn't done that way originally, but it could be done with a live band. And you've seen that so many times. I saw, I think, Eminem at one time at Lollapalooza or something, and his band was awesome that he had back there, doing, of course there was a DJ cutting stuff in here and there, on top of, but it could be interpreted that way as well, with the live aesthetic, which is great. It's great for energy, for the live scene.
Well, think about the culture on that one. I throw one at you that's pretty funny and interesting. Lil Wayne with a band is ridiculous, and it's crazy because he fits that rock persona. So you got a rapper that started off as a rapper, and now he looks more like he could be the fourth member in Red Chili Peppers or something like that. So he's taking on that persona. I mean, like I saw him do song "Drop It on Your Head" and with a band, and I was like, wow. I mean, it was, his rock album it's actually sound better than some of the hip hop albums he put out there, which is crazy. The fact that he got really into the music. But yeah, I hope to see more collaboration like that over time, because I think that's what like you said, the problem with hip hop today is there's so many artists you can't understand, and there's so many artists that are so clever. Look at Lil Uzi, the Lil Uzi movement right now. I don't know if you know what that is. Lil Uzi is it's like blurring hip hop, rap, rock, and probably emo. Now the emo stuff is crept into hip hop. Now you got the emo hip hop going on, like Travis Scott. It's a whole different genre, which
Right.
even you think about Tyler the Creator, you think about those guys, they have a rock base to them. They move like rock stars.
Sure. Yeah. Now I got to hear that now. Now I got to hear that with the emo influence. Now you got me interested. I got to check it out. Not necessarily because I love it or don't love it. I just got to hear it now. I just want to hear how it sounds. So I got to check that.
Yeah,
But,
emo hip hop emerging a little bit. There's rappers. It's the dark side. It's the black nails. It's the long hair. It's the belts. The tight jeans. You're like, okay, is that a rapper? Or is he rock? It's a mixture of both. It's a hybrid.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, there's been so much of it, and why, if you can go into something without having a boundary, there's no reason why you can't produce something out of it, like it's whatever. I mean, if I'm with my guys and we're, primarily a rock band, well, it's probably going to come out that way, but it could be turned and twisted and manipulated any which way we want it from that point on. So I think it's great that people are digging in and out of different genres. I think it's good. It keeps people interested is what it does. It probably, from a marketing perspective, I think it's a great idea, because you're ultimately, once you reach that point, now you're spreading that blanket over a wider group. You start seeing different faces at your shows and selling more gear, so it makes perfect sense. So it should always be a thing. That's one thing I'm going to always, that's why my kid last night, loving Eric B, also loves this punk rap band that they're not new, but I just discovered them, this band called The Gallows. I can't stop listening to them.
I know they are.
They're English dudes, like blue collared English dudes that are like the kind of a punk metal thing. And I love it, and, but, flip the station and I'm hearing some funk, as well, so I kind of got to have it all, and if you could somehow figure out ways to manipulate and put it in and out of things you're doing with the groups you're in, that's great, but there's you got to be in front of the right people, right? You know what I mean? It's like, sometimes if you're up there already and people are expecting to hear shit from you, and you start twisting and turning genres, then all of a sudden you can insult some people, to me, those are the kind of people I don't even want in the crowd. You know what I mean? Anyways, I'd rather have the guy who wants to hear me change it up. You know what I mean? If I'm at that point, I'm, at this point, I don't see that happening. But if I'm at that point where I'm packing stadiums and shit like that, to me, I'd want to have the crowd be open-minded that way,
I agree. I mean, that's what influences the way you listen to music. Like, I got into Bun Iver. You probably know about Bun Iver.
Sure.
I got into Francis and the Lights, those different groups. I mean, and these guys out of Wisconsin. It's crazy that Wisconsin has its own sound, and you got Chicagoland down here basically, and like Bud Iver. I got into them. Like I was listening. It's like listening. It's like I transitioned from Coldplay to Bud Iver, and then I start listening to all these different genres, and then you sit there and you start listening to stuff, and you go, "Wow, man, that is ridiculous." You think about it. I mean, there's so much good music out there right now that people. You wish sometimes that people like we always tell people you listen to our show, go out and listen to something dope today, because you go out there and just listen to something. It doesn't necessarily have to be hip hop. It's something that basically everything's hip hop, while everything's rock to a certain extent, because they all like basically they're hybrids of each other. Sure. So that's the way I look at music. I look at music in terms of if it's got a good beat and I listen to it, I start imagining how to use it, or how some other artists use that track. Pretty much, that's the way I listen to music. Or I hear it one time and go, "That's a hit."
Yeah.
There's like one group I got into, Alabama Shakes. Check them
Oh
out
yeah.
if you ever heard. Oh man, they
Yeah.
can play.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. She's a
yeah,
great singer.
great
Yeah.
singer. I heard them up in Milwaukee at a record shop, and I was like, "This is incredible."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of those bands too. I mean, I don't know if they've even put anything out new lately, but I remember they had there was a buzz around them a little while back, and everything I had heard, I enjoyed from them, and that's not hip hop. That's not necessarily true rock. That's not necessarily that. It almost has a kind of Americana behind it and underneath it, a little bluesy at times, a little folky at times, all melded into one, so again, there's always that crossover and cross contamination, if you will, the good cross contamination, but I'll tell you what, I would love, again, to get back to that, is to get reacquainted with some of my old friends and put some good, bounce your head type, hip hop overlayment on some of the things that I'm doing musically now. I'd love to do it. I think it would be great. I think it'd be fun. And I have a feeling we'd probably be able to pack some places if we did it, some small places, but some places nonetheless, so maybe Jay, when he listens back at this, Jay, we want to get this together again, let's work on something.
Oh man, I think he want that very badly. I mean, it's needed right now, Dave, in that situation. You think in terms of the light of what we're dealing with in this country today, music is our saving grace right now. You think about it. It's the thing that everybody unites. So we might not, people might not agree on what they believe in, but they'll sit there and listen to music and bond at the same time, which is the beauty of music.
I couldn't agree more, and that is like when I know people who don't listen to music, like they'd rather have talk radio on or some shit when they're in the car. Like I don't know how, yeah, I don't know how, I mean, like my soul would bleed if I didn't, you know what I mean? If I didn't have that, it's important. I think it's very important. I mean, it's a soundtrack of your life, not to sound corny or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's all important. It keeps you stimulated, and it keeps the mind and the soul stimulated as far as I'm concerned. Music is at the core and the center of it all. At least for me. And it is in my household, because thankfully I have also a wife who is a good fan of good music and has been supportive of going to good shows and been my sidekick at so many different shows and genres and shit. She'd probably be better at a hip hop history than I would, because she loves her hip hop, but it's allowing me to keep it definitely vibrant in my household with my kids. Because I'd be lying if I would say that I didn't want them to be little musicians, only because I know how good it makes me feel, when I'm doing it. So I want them to have that feeling, of course, if they don't, they veer off and they do something else, that's cool too. But, want them at least to try, and it's good for the minds and everything else, and as far as, music is math, there's a math, it's all done with math, you know what I mean? 4 times, 3 times, 5 times, however. So these little kids are getting a little education when they're doing it as well, so it's good on so many levels. But like I said, I don't know how you cannot have music. I don't care if it's country, I don't care if it's classical, I don't care what it is, I mean, it's like, I don't know, I don't get guys who don't have something on in the background at some point,
It gets you through the day, man. Like, I could be having a bad day and I could change the song, or I'm in a meeting and I'm annoyed. I got music in the background playing. It's just what I know exactly what you mean. Like XM radio, it's been a godsend, because to be able to listen to whatever genre you want when you want to listen to it with no commercials is awesome.
Right.
I grew up in the era where, we were burning CDs and mini discs and stuff like that. We're going to Coconuts and Tower
Yeah.
Records downtown.
Polka
buying
dots.
buying music everywhere. You know, at that
Yeah,
point, we're carrying around the giant CD cases, and then they took that away from us, and they
yeah,
went to this man to the MP3 world, and that was annoying for a minute. I mean, we went to iPods. You remember the iPod revolution? It was who had the biggest iPod with all the music in, and we plugged it in somewhere, and then we got off of that, and it went to the cloud. And when it went to the cloud, it became XM, and now we're coming back into vinyl. So now
right.
vinyl has crept back into the whole situation because I got into vinyl maybe about 10 years ago. And
Yeah,
it was a group of us buying it, but it's nothing like today. Today you go to Target, there's vinyl. You go to Best Buy for now, there's vinyl. And you
right.
go in there and you see all this vinyl, and now I was going to record shops like Reckless Records. I was going to Sugar on Milwaukee Avenue. The whole Wicker Park. Wicker Park is where I got my music from, because
Of course. Yeah,
every record shop over there was selling hip hop. It was buying the Beatles albums. It was picking up Led Zeppelin. Then it branched off into hip hop. Whatever Jay-Z album that came out 25, 30 years ago, you wanted that album. So it's beautiful stuff, man.
another good spot for you too,
Mhm.
if you're looking at buying some vinyl here and there, is Guitar Center. They have a vinyl
Really.
section in Guitar Center because I'll be there buying my instruments or buying chords or buying whatever for whatever
Hmm.
I'm doing, and that's where I've tripped over some great albums recently.
Oh.
Um, yeah, they have a section in there, and they'll change it, up, and I've seen everything from Stevie Wonder to Led Zeppelin in there. You know what I mean? So, um, and all of that is beautiful. So what's beautiful about also the vinyl is it brings you back to the isolation aspect of music, with the
Hmm.
cloud and everything else and the different Spotify's and Amazon Musics of the world. That's great for the mobile world, of moving around and doing things. But when you have that album, you're not taking your turntable and throwing it in the back seat of your car. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
That's
you're
true.
you're at home and you're putting that on and you're getting into it within your space. And that's the beauty of it. It kind of brings it back to where it all started. So that's a great thing with that. I still do that even with the cloud. I'll down here working out, or I'm down here hanging out, or I'm doing something in my cave, and there's music on. So if it's happening by way of Amazon Music or Spotify, or I miss my iPod, to be honest with you. I kind of missed what was great about those iPods is when you got the big one, and you have 10,000 songs in there, and you're downloading your own music in there. You start hearing stuff you haven't heard in a long time because you're going on that far out song on the album that you kind of skip past once in a while.
Right.
So that was great. So it was almost like better than a radio station in a sense, because you were listening to artists that you love, but you were listening to songs you haven't heard from in a while at times when you were shuffling. So I do miss that side of it, but it's too easy. I think in times it kind of makes people fickle
Mhm.
to music, and you got to have the true lovers of music to know that there still is good music out there. Because I hear people saying at times, "Oh man, there's nothing good out there," and I'm like, that's not true.
Hmm.
That's not true. You know what I mean? There's a lot of good bands out there. There's a lot of good up and coming bands. A lot of good shit that you could be listening to if you're a true fan of music. You just you gotta know where to look. And go down that rabbit hole. Listen to one, and next thing you know, something else is popping up. That's the convenience of the times now, right? So but it's out there. It's definitely out there.
You're right. You got so many different avenues like Guitar Center. I definitely check them out because I've been thinking about buying. So the weird thing with music, when I look at it, like I'm thinking about buying a DJ controller set, because it's like sometimes you sit there and you go, okay, like if I'm working with Jay on the pod or something, like he sends me an MP3 or something, I'm like, I want to put it on the controller and see what we can do to change it. So it's like I hear something that they got produced, and I'm like, what if you changed it, or what if you slowed it down? What if what if you put a layer on top of it? That's
Sure.
the way I hear stuff sometimes. Like it's missing something. So you hear it and you go, okay, right. So the 808 is off a little bit on this. Let's fix the 808. Now listen to it. It sounds like a totally different song. It's like I mean, we do music is so different from when you think about, you mentioned Stevie Wonder. You think about the song's The Key of Life. You think about that album. The production on that album is ridiculous. And you hear it and you're just like, wow, is that the only thing that, sometimes that's an album you make, and how do you follow it up? It's almost like you just can't go to that, like I always joke about being in the studio during those moments. How do you recreate that? You don't in that situation. I mean, Michael Jackson did the same thing with Off the Wall. Off the Wall was better than Thriller, to be honest with you. Man, that album is so much better than other albums. And you hear it and you go, okay, this is Quincy Jones or this is so-and-so. Or that's Rick Rubin on this track. Listen to this track compared to the other tracks today. I mean, you can't duplicate. That's always been my issue, even with sports, you think about it. People talk about the GOAT comparison, right? And you go,
dude, I'm so tired of that shit.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
How do you compare Michael to LeBron? And then you throw Wembanyama in the situation who hasn't done anything yet, but he's going to be a good player. He's just getting started. So you can't compare Michael to LeBron. Two different eras in that situation. This era, I can hand check you, mug you, fight you in the parking lot, and do cocaine. This is the era of I'm going to fall on the ground, cry about it, and you're going to give me 2 free throws and respect me. This is the Me Too movement versus the We Saw It movement in that situation. So like my kid, my 11-year-old is a LeBron fan, and she always goes, he's so much better than Michael. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. If you believe that in your vision of basketball, he's your GOAT. Okay, I'll let you have that. But
Sure.
we saw Kobe at a certain level. You saw Michael at a certain level.
We were spoiled. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, to what we've dealt with Chicago sports over the last, especially with the Bulls right now, they aggravate the shit out of me because I love the Bulls.
God, that game last night, Jesus Christ.
It's like what a blessing. I mean, like that was. I mean, it was just it'll never be like that again. I don't care who was born. You know what I mean? Like who's born and comes in, and I don't care how many YouTube videos they watch on how to dribble with 3-butt basketballs. It doesn't matter. What we had back then was just it was unreal. And it was what a great, like for me, when they won their first championship, I was I think 19 years old. You know what I mean? So what a time. I remember going to Michael Jordan's restaurant and watching playoff games through the course of all that with my fake ID, you know what I mean? And it can never be duplicated. So, yeah, you're right. You got to give the kids what they know. They don't know the difference, right? But it's like Led Zeppelin now, then to a rock band now. One doesn't exist without the other. You know what I mean? And Jordan without the GOAT, really to me, it's Jordan, then Kobe. Then you maybe talk about LeBron in the middle of all that, but Kobe's a lot closer to Jordan than LeBron ever will be, as far as that killer instinct goes, and with music, again, there's that parallel, there's so many great bands out there and they're doing their thing. And of course they're influenced by some of that stuff from the past. Of course you should be, and you should be okay to talk about it. You know what I mean? Because that's where it starts, that's where it all starts. So again, there isn't one without the other. But yeah, we were spoiled.
Oh man, I think of you that game of the night, watching Giannis destroy them, and watching Zach take bad shots, and I'm just like, I try not to be negative about that situation, because you like, okay, I say something negative, it lives forever on a podcast, right? Yeah. But you look at it and you go, okay, are they really this bad? What's wrong with them? Is Giannis really this good? I think Giannis in the 80s is an average player in the 80s. I think there's so many Giannis body types back then. There's so many strongmen in the NBA at that point in time. I think he's got a unique skill set. But is he win MVP in the 80s? Probably not. If Magic Johnson struggled to win MVP with Michael, Larry, and everybody else out there, and Karl Malone and the rest.
Yeah, I was just going to say, put him up against Karl Malone and let's see how he muscles Karl Malone. I think it's a different game.
He's Otis Thorpe at that point. If you think about it, I mean, and these guys get so, even hearing like Gilbert Arenas complain about the NBA being so garbage in the 80s. And you go, well, Gilbert, okay, let's talk about your era. Your era was part of Michael's third coming, right? And you guys barely, none of you guys won anything. but you guys are all saying you're great. Or I was cooking people. You cooked for like 5 or 6 games during the season, had some big games, but did you cook in the finals? Did you cook 6 times in the finals or whatever? Or they said LeBron, he gets a trophy for getting there. I don't believe in the participation culture, trophy culture going on right now.
Right.
Where if I get there, you got to give me a high five for getting there. I might not win it, but guess what? They're a better team than me, so I'm expected to lose against the Warriors or whatever. I never understood that mentality. That's the mentality that the NBA has today. Music, Crave, basically hasn't went that route. But you hope music never gets to the point where people are just doing just enough to survive, then the genre is dead at that point. Sports, that's where we're at right now, especially NBA life is, if I get there and I try, you got to make me a ghost.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
No, from a sports fan's perspective, it's disappointing. And I always love seeing the dude wearing the same jersey throughout his whole career. I thought there was something to that. There's a loyalty aspect to it. There's a not give up aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously these guys jumping around, James Harden forces himself out anywhere he doesn't want to be.
God.
And, it gets frustrating. I love basketball. I love basketball and football. And what sucks about our Chicago teams is that, like with the Bears last year, they were the worst, most exciting team in the league.
Yeah.
Justin Field was running all over the place. We kind of, we'll get them next year mentality. And then, we're kind of falling flat again. With the Bulls, it's like they're good enough to keep you interested, but they're not going to win anything. And I hate to say it, but they got to blow that team up. You know what I mean? And they got to do what these other teams are doing. Look at the Orlando Magics and the Detroit Pistons of the world. The records might not show it right now, but give them a couple years with all the draft picks and all the moves that they've made. Some of those cores stay together. They're going to be good teams. They're going to be really good teams. And the Bulls seem to have a hard time with those young athletic teams. And
you know why? We draft the same body type year after year. There's Dalen Terry. There's DePaul. I'm going to start calling that dude the Midden. There's Kobe White's a little bit shorter in that situation, but he's instant offense, but you got him running the point guard. You got him being a point guard in the NBA, which means that he's more of a 2, or he's your 6 man at this point. To be honest with you. And then you got
what, he stepped up though. I think he's doing a good job. I think
this year,
he's playing a lot better defense than he has in the past. His D has completely stepped up,
right.
and his ball handling skills altogether, I think, have definitely improved. They had to if he was going to play the point, but he was showing signs of that last year. I think giving him a contract help build some confidence there. So I think Kobe's potentially someone they keep around. I like the kid, the rookie that they got. What's that? I think he played for, was it Texas maybe, or
Phillips.
Julian Phillips, right?
Phillips, yeah.
I'm yelling at the TV, like, just put the kid in, like, put him in. You know what I mean? These other teams are playing young guys. Play the young guys. You know what I mean? If we're not winning, we're not winning a championship here. Get these kids some mileage. You know what I mean? Like, let's get them in these games. Let's get them some real time game experience. I think that's a kid who potentially blossoms and becomes something a little bit more. He's got that new, again, the body type, long, lanky, can shoot, and can dunk the shit out of the ball. You know what I mean? That's a kid who needs playing time, as far as I'm concerned. But Donovan's not playing him.
Adomo, you got Domo, you got him. You got to go young at this point. The problem, I think, with Patrick Williams is that he lost his will. They didn't give him the contract. He went 0. He put those zeros up. He failed to score in 2 games. He looked depressed at the end of one of those games. He won the game, and he walked off the court a certain way. We break athletes in Chicago. We broke Justin Fields, to be honest with you, unfortunately. Right. We took the excitement out of that man's life. That young dude is not going to be the same. We broke Justin Fields. And every time you watch a Bears game, and you go, we try to make him a pocket passer. He's not a pocket passer. So we want you to stand here and read the defense and make the right pass. That guy's running the option. He's running a spread option now. This is the West Coast offense with Justin Fields. You got to let him get out there and be a playmaker,
right,
and use his feet, and that's how he's gonna win games.
Right.
To turn him into Drew Brees, good luck. or turn him into a Peyton Manning type. He's not. That's not him. They didn't play that way in
I
Ohio
agree.
State.
I agree.
So
I mean, but
yeah.
with that situation, it's like you coach, you have this coach, this guy didn't work, this guy was trying to do this, and you bring this guy in, and like it's like these guys need consistency, and they need to have, like, as you said, play to this guy's strong points, not try to make him something that he is not. And I just my last name Urso means bear. It means that's what it means, bear in Italian. And it's like, I'm a Chicago Bear, dude. You know what I mean? I want my Bears. I got the plates on my truck, on my Chicago Bears plate. I love my teams. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a Sox fan over a Cubs fan, even though I don't wish bad on the Cubs, and
It's hard not to.
What's that?
It's hard not to sometimes. I mean,
it's not hard. My wife's a Cubs fan. We're house divided, but
Yeah.
I want my teams to win. I want them, for my sons, like to see good teams, because I know how awesome that is. Because again, we were spoiled, but the Bears haven't been good in a long time, and they need to step up and figure some shit out.
It's ownership with them, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not going to change until the McCaskey change, because we could go out and get a new coach. I mean, it looks like Harbaugh. It looks like Harbaugh is going to come and join us after this year, after all his troubles in Michigan. We're getting Harbaugh. The problem getting Harbaugh right now is that he's going to want to put a different system in. That's going to set us back 2 to 3 years. Totally. He's not going to rock with Fields because he knows Fields' game from when coaching at Michigan, Ohio State, and he's had some reservations about Fields' game. So if you hire Harbaugh, you're saying bye to Fields at this point. He's going to go out, get the pocket passer. They're going to get the running back that carries 20, 30 times per game, and the tight end. Right. So you already know what is going to happen. Getting rid of Eberflus is the end of Fields here, and they're going to get the #1 pick. They're going to draft probably Caleb or somebody, and right. They're going to go back to the future. That's what's going to happen pretty much. They're going to reset.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I like what I saw out of Fields last year.
I like it too.
What I saw last year, leading into this year, why I was optimistic like I am most of the time, because I love my teams again, but is that I saw that the kid had heart. You know what I mean? And it's like sometimes what you don't have in skill could be made up with the heart, with the urge to want to make it happen. And at times his heart was pushing him to kind of overdo it last year. And that's where he was making his mistakes, but he didn't have DJ Moore, and right. DJ Moore's a beast, and I feel like they're not using him right. You know what I mean? Like that kid needs to see the ball. I don't care if it's a 2-yard dump. Get that kid the ball. He gets yardage after the catch. So
let him play in space. Let him play in space. If you you give the ball in space, you'll get you 10 or 15 extra yards on top of that. He's a beast. And
he's a beast. The kid's a beast, man. He's yards after the catch. Game. Yeah, no, they're not using him right, And if you're using him right, that's going to free up Mooney, who I think has got great hands and he's quick, and I like that.
But you got to unlock more. You got to unlock DJ in order to get Mooney playing, and then
exactly.
You think about if they were to draft a wide receiver this year and not look at the quarterback position, that'd be fine. I mean, or you're going to pick up somebody in free agency right now, but that offensive line has been god awful. They're better now. They're right. A whole lot better. You see what they're doing for Bayesian is totally different because they matured over the season. Early on, Fields is getting dumped every other play, man. And Bayesian's got really good protection right now. So that means that when Fields comes back, he should be able to take advantage of that protection. But those guys are going to be athletic enough to keep up with Fields stepping out that pocket. That's what the problem is right now. He's like Ohio State, they had dogs out there. They had guys. He had defenders out. He had people out there that were protecting his neck. He was able to do the magic and things he needed to get done. Right. The Bears don't have that type of offensive line right now, but they should be able to get it.
When you're running for your life and you're feeling people breathing down your neck all the time, and then you're gonna make bad decisions, and it's, I know we got into sports and everything, but but back to the music, back to the music thing. Another thing that relates is like from the quarterback position. I'm kind of like the quarterback playing the drums because I'm keeping everyone together. And when you get kind of comfortable in your skin, that cliche that you've heard basketball players and football players say over time is the game slows down.
It does. It's slow motion. When you're good, I can see everything, every mistake out there. I can see it before it happens. I played basketball, so I would see people. I can visualize the ball. They're gonna do this. They run the same set every time they come up the court. It's the same thing in music. You know, when you know artist is good, or you're a drummer, you control. You're like the general out there on the stage. You're the one that when you rock, we rock. That's how it works with the drummer situation.
Right.
If you're off court, we're off court, but they wouldn't even notice because you establish what the rhythm is, the cadence is out there.
Right. Right. And and from a quarterback's perspective, right now you got people breathing down your neck the whole time. And so yeah, I mean, they needed to make some improvements to the line. I think they have. And hopefully that group will grow and they'll be able to strengthen it so we can actually get someone to get some time to make some good decisions back there. But I mean, we're on the same page. We want to see our teams win. There's nothing like, my Monday mornings will always be better when the Bears would win on Sunday.
Sunday sucks when they lose. They lose on a Sunday and you got to go to work the next day and you got those Packers fans in your office. And it's nothing like living in Chicago with Packers fans.
Oh, it is,
and they're the worst. I mean, how do you wear that ugly jersey every day? They're like, it's a better color than the Bears, blue and orange. I'm like, no, it's not. You want to tell yourself that to sleep at night, fine with me. But it's a love-hate. We're in a toxic relationship, Dave. I mean, some days it's good, other days you want a divorce. Say the Bears, the Bulls, the Blackhawks are coming back. Bedard is a beast.
That kid's looking good.
You put a couple more weapons around that kid. I saw Kane. I was here during the Kane era, and you're looking about what he did. This kid might be 5 years ahead of him, and with his stick handling is incredible.
Yeah, that kid's slap shot I heard is like 80, 90 miles an hour or something
on one leg. Oh, that's off balance. Yeah,
he's a skinny young kid. So there's just straight. Yeah. That's just that he was born with it.
No, man, he's a generational talent. I mean, that's what it would take for the Bulls. You got to find you want to be humble. You got to develop a bunch of studs like the Detroit Pistons did when they won the championship over the Lakers. I'm talking about the Ben Wallace era. You got to get a bunch of guys that are willing to do the dirty work in order to win the championship, or you need a stud. That's the way it's going to work for Chicago sports. The Cubs won that year because they had a bunch of dogs, and then you had a lot of draft picks, and they fleeced the Sox on a lot of players. A lot of those players were not in the Sox farm system. So think about how the Cubs got good. The Sox helped them. That's unfortunate. Yeah. And now it's the reverse. Now I go out and try to buy a World Series this year. If they get Ohtani, Jesus Christ. That's what I got to say. The Sox should be the first person at that plate. Ohtani would change the whole culture of the White Sox. But we won't spend the money.
Yeah, no, they won't. There's one common point there between the Bulls and the Sox, right? Reinsdorf. It's like, and if you fall back on history, says, yeah, we got there in 2005, and yeah, the Bulls were what they were at one time, but the Sox, a lot of things happened right. They made the right moves and so forth. They had a good core. The Bulls were the Bulls. And now the times have changed. I just don't see how some of those old ways of doing things are gonna work. So I almost feel the same way as I do with Reinsdorf as I do with the McCaskies, in a sense. They gotta
change.
There's got to be a complete change, or like sell the team off, do something. You know what I mean? Like, let's sell it to people who want to. Look at what happened to the Cubs when when Wrigley sold. That's actually a good example of that new blood in there, and a back room that wants to make shit happen. So we'll see. Otherwise, we're just going to be continually frustrated from that side of things. But I have a feeling the Bulls are gonna. I think this is it now. I think they're gonna get to a point where they're gonna realize here they're gonna have to say, okay, we throw in the towel. Let me get some draft picks, and let's go young on this thing, and then get a developmental type coach in there to do that. And I don't know if what's his face?
Billy, he's not gonna
Billy.
stick around.
I don't know. I don't know if he's the right guy, for that, so.
He needs to go to a veteran team, a team that's on the verge of trying to get to the championship, and he can just come in and put his system in. Right now, look at Toronto. Toronto had a farm system. Nurse leaves, goes to Philly because he realizes that I got to develop these guys. They got a lot of killers up there in Toronto. The problem is you need time. Right. He goes to Philly. He gets Embiid. He gets Maxey and the rest of those players. They're ready to go right now.
Right.
So whoever got Toronto or Indiana's got a lot of young horses out there. Yeah. You look at Detroit's loaded, and you think about this, and you go, okay, and look at Cleveland. Everything outside of Chicago was loaded because we sat pat. We went older, and we went. Lonzo Ball was the engine behind the Bulls. When Lonzo went down, he makes all these parts work together. Right. When we lost our engine. And I felt bad for Zoe in that situation because you're like, man, he was there. You saw what AK built, and you're like, look at this. Like this guy is throwing dimes out here. They're shooting threes at a high level. These are not good shooters.
And he played D.
He played D.
That
awesome.
Yeah, that was. I agree. I mean, and that sucks because we didn't get to see the full potential, and I don't think that's going to ever come to fruition. I don't know if that kid won't ever come back the same way. There's no way, and that's a shame. You don't want to see that for these young guys.
26 years old with basically a degenerate knee at this point. That knee doesn't look good. I've seen him trying to walk on it. Seen him trying to do. You saw the challenge. He's jumping out the pool with it, and I'm like, no, Zoe, don't do it. Yeah. You need to walk one day. So, you won't find another Lonzo and another Lonzo Ball at this point. You won't find another Zoe Ball. I think our big three is aged rapidly without him. And, Vooch plays no D. Doesn't have interest in defense. He rebounds well. And then, DeMar and Zach are essentially the same people. So they're ISO ball players. So the ball sticks when it goes to them. So how do you get other players involved? That means Patrick Williams has been delayed 2 or 3 years development wise. Kobe found the way to play with the three of them. Right. The ball couldn't figure it out. He won't figure it out.
That being said, with all that, I am very pleased with Craig and Carter, those pickups.
You know what? Best pickups in a long time. You know why? Because they're the missing pieces. They're the hustle pieces. We never
really are. Carter's been hitting the lights out with the threes, and the kid plays D, and he's a Chicago kid, Proviso East. So you gotta love that. So I'm very happy with that. That was 2 of the better moves that they made. Even though I loved was that kid Javonte Green. That played for the. I loved his energy, and 6'4", 6'3", the kid would dunk. Tear the backboard off when he was.
He's a monster. He was a monster. Yeah, he's out the league now, unfortunately. Knee problem.
No, I think he's playing for Houston.
Is it Houston now? Good.
Yeah,
good.
Me and my son. My son was interested because we both love Javonte. So he asked Alexa last week where Javonte Green was playing.
Marquette. I wish we had that back in the 80s. Where is Kevin McHale right now?
Right. Yeah. That's funny. So listen, man, I got to move on to get some work done today, and I could talk to you for hours. You guys are awesome. You're obviously a good guy. I'm glad Jay hooked up with you, and I really appreciate the interest and the time you're taking to talk to me, little old me. Awesome, you know what I mean? So.
No, we appreciate you, Dave, and just want to say, you ever want to come back on? We do sports and music. We definitely do a show like that. Talk about what that plan was, what music we like doing the Bulls era and the Blackhawks era. We could do that, but definitely go get some work done. I'm about to do the same thing, and definitely everybody check us out. We're podcasts are available. Go listen to something dope today, and appreciate you guys for listening. All right,
and one more thing. Yeah. Why don't we have why don't we all get together and have a holiday cocktail sometime?
Let's do it.
Let's make a plan to do that. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Dave. All right.
Have a good rest of the week.
You too, man. All right, peace.